The little girl stood alone in the corner of the crowded charity gala, her expensive white dress pristine and untouched, her dark eyes scanning the room with a mixture of help and resignation that no 6-year-old should ever have to wear. While hundreds of elegantly dressed adults swirled around her father, the tech billionaire Marcus Chen, reaching for his attention, his money, his influence, she remained invisible, a ghost in silk and ribbons. I watched her for 20 minutes before I realized what everyone else had missed. She wasn't shy, she wasn't being difficult or antisocial as I'd heard one woman whisper to her companion. She was deaf, and in a room full of voices clamoring to be heard, hers had been silenced by a world that didn't know how to listen. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I've spent the last 8 years teaching American Sign Language to elementary school children in Brooklyn. I wasn't supposed to be at this Manhattan fundraiser at all. My sister Emily, a corporate lawyer who actually belonged in rooms like this, had come down with the flu at the last minute and begged me to take her ticket. "It's for the children's hospital," she'd pleaded over the phone, her voice hoarse. "Someone should use the $500 ticket. Just go, smile, eat some fancy food, and leave. You don't have to talk to anyone." But I'd never been good at not talking to anyone, especially children who looked lost. The Plaza Hotel ballroom glittered with the kind of wealth I'd only seen in movies. Crystal chandeliers caught the light from 1,000 angles, casting rainbow prisms across faces powdered and perfumed to perfection. The champagne flowed endlessly, and I'd counted at least 7 ice sculptures before I stopped trying. Everyone who was anyone in New York's elite circles had shown up, and they all seemed to be gravitating toward the same man. Marcus Chen stood near the center of the room, his presence commanding despite his relatively modest height. At 42, he'd built 3 companies from the ground up, sold 2 for billions, and now ran the third, a revolutionary AI firm that was reshaping how the world understood technology. Forbes had named him one of the most influential people under 50. Time magazine had put him on their cover. And right now, he looked exhausted. I recognized that expression. It was the same one my father used to wear at my mother's work parties, before she passed. The smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. The automatic nods at appropriate intervals. The careful positioning of the body to suggest engagement, while the mind was clearly somewhere else entirely. His daughter, whose name I would later learn was Lily, had given up trying to get his attention about 10 minutes before I noticed her. She tugged at his sleeve once, twice, 3 times, but each time an important somebody had intercepted, pulling Marcus into another conversation about portfolios and partnerships and philanthropic opportunities. After the 3rd attempt, Lily had drifted away, a small boat ummed, until she'd found her corner. I saw her hands move. It was subtle, almost invisible, but I'd spent nearly a decade watching hands communicate, and I recognized the gestures immediately. She was signing to herself, telling herself a story perhaps, or maybe just processing the overwhelming isolation of being surrounded by hundreds of people and being utterly alone. My feet moved before my brain fully engaged. "Hi," I signed as I approached, keeping my movements slow and clear. "My name is Sarah. What's yours?" The transformation on Lily's face was instantaneous and so profound it nearly broke my heart. Her eyes, which had been dulled with resigned sadness, suddenly blazed with light. Her entire body shifted from a closed, protective posture to something open and eager. Her hands flew up, moving with the excitement of someone who'd been waiting to talk to anyone at all. "Lily," she signed, her movements big and emphatic the way young children sign when they're excited. "You know sign language." "Nobody here knows sign language. Daddy promised there would be someone, but he was wrong." "Are you a friend of Daddy's?" "I'm a teacher," I signed back, settling down onto the floor beside her corner, not caring that my borrowed dress was probably picking up dust. "I teach sign language to kids your age." "How old are you?" 6. She held up 6 fingers proudly. "I'm in 1st grade." "Well, I will be. Right now I'm in kindergarten but school is over for the summer." "Do you like teaching?" "I think I want to be a teacher when I grow up, or maybe a veterinarian. I really love dogs." For the next 20 minutes, we sat in that corner and talked. Lily told me about her school, a specialized institution for deaf and hard of hearing children in Connecticut where she lived with her father. She told me about her best friend Jessica, who was also deaf, and how they were learning to read together. She explained, with the earnest seriousness only a 6-year-old can muster, the complex social dynamics of her kindergarten class, and who was friends with whom and why Tommy couldn't be trusted during group projects because he always wanted to build with blocks instead of following the assignment. She told me about her mother, who had died when Lily was 2 years old. She didn't remember her much, just feelings and scents and the vague impression of safety. Daddy says Mommy knew sign language. Lily signed. Daddy learned it for Mommy. And then I was born and Mommy got very sick. Daddy says Mommy would have loved to talk with me. I'm sure she would have. I signed, feeling the familiar tightness in my throat that came with unexpected emotion. You're wonderful to talk to. Lily beamed. It was then that Marcus Chen found us. Lily? His voice carried a note of panic I hadn't heard before. He was suddenly there, looming over us, his polished shoes reflecting the chandelier light. Lily, I've been looking everywhere for her. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw us signing. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Surprise, certainly, relief, and something else. Something that looked almost like pain. You know ASL? I stood up, brushing off my dress. Yes, I'm Sarah Mitchell. I teach it to elementary students. She's my friend. Lily signed and spoke simultaneously, her voice having the particular quality of someone who'd worked hard with speech therapists but would always primarily communicate through sign. Daddy, she can actually talk to me. She knows all the signs and she thinks I'm wonderful to talk to. Marcus Chen's carefully constructed billionaire composure cracked. For just a moment, standing there in his $2,000 suit with his daughter looking up at him with pure joy, he looked like what he actually was. A tired single father doing his best in a world that wasn't built for his child. I'm sorry, he said quietly, and I realized he was signing as he spoke, his movements fluid and natural. I thought I'd arranged for an ASL interpreter to be here tonight. I was told there would be someone. I shouldn't have brought her if I couldn't guarantee she could communicate. But my regular sitter fell through and I couldn't miss this event. It's for the hospital that saved my wife's life for 2 years longer than anyone expected, and he stopped himself. I'm making excuses. Thank you for talking to her. She must have been so lonely. I wasn't lonely anymore. Lily signed with emphatic joy. Sarah told me about all her students and we talked about dogs, and she said she likes golden retrievers best, which is the correct answer. And she's going to tell me more about being a teacher. Marcus looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time since he'd rushed over. Would you? He hesitated. I know this is incredibly presumptuous, and you're here as a guest, but would you consider staying with Lily for the rest of the evening? I have to give a speech in 20 minutes and there are several people I promised to speak with, but I don't want her to be alone again. I'll pay you. Of course, whatever your rate is, I'll triple it. Something about the offer bothered me, though I couldn't articulate why in the moment. You don't have to pay me, I said, signing as I spoke so Lily could follow. I'm happy to hang out with Lily. She's excellent company. The look Marcus gave me then was one I'd remember for a long time. It was the look of someone who'd become so accustomed to every interaction being transactional that genuine kindness had become unrecognizable. For the next 2 hours, Lily and I were inseparable. We raided the dessert table together, signed detailed reviews of each fancy patty we tried. We made up stories about the other guests based on their outfits and mannerisms. She told me about the chapter book her father was reading to her at night, and I promised to read the next one in the series myself so we could discuss it. When Marcus gave his speech, a moving tribute to the doctors and nurses who'd cared for his late wife, Lily sat on my lap and we signed quiet commentary to each other, and I interpreted the parts of his speech she couldn't catch from reading his lips. At one point, a woman in a glittering gold dress approached us with a condescending smile. "How sweet," she cooed, speaking loudly and slowly as if volume could overcome Lily's deafness. "Is this Marcus's little girl? Are you having fun, sweetie?" Lily looked at me and signed. Why is she yelling? Does she think I'm all so stupid? I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. I signed back, Some people don't understand the difference between deaf and hard of hearing. Should we educate her? Lily's grin was mischievous. She turned to the woman and spoke carefully, her voice clear. I'm deaf, not hard of hearing. Speaking loudly doesn't help. But thank you for your interest. Then she turned back to me and we continued our conversation in sign, leaving the woman looking flustered. That was perfectly handled. I signed to Lily. Daddy taught me that. She signed back proudly. He says I should always be polite but firm. He says the world needs to learn to meet me where I am, not the other way around. Marcus found us again as the event was winding down. Lily had fallen asleep against my shoulder, worn out from the evening's excitement and the rare joy of sustained communication with someone new. She never does that, Marcus said softly, looking at his daughter with such tenderness it hurt to witness. She never sleeps around strangers. She must really trust you. She's an incredible kid, I said. You should be proud. I am. He paused. Look, I meant what I said about payment. Please don't. I interrupted. Really? This isn't about money. I spent the evening with a wonderful little girl who happens to sign. That's not work. That's honestly been the best night I've had in months. Marcus sat down in the chair across from us, suddenly looking less like a billionaire and more like an exhausted dad. Can I ask you something? And please be honest. I nodded. How many people do you think walked past her tonight? Really saw her standing there alone and made the conscious choice to keep walking? I didn't want to answer, but his eyes demanded honesty. All of them, I said quietly. Everyone who saw her, which was most of the room at some point or another. He nodded slowly, as if I'd confirmed something he'd already known. Do you know what the worst part is? Half the people here tonight have met Lily before. She's come to events with me since she was 3 years old. They know she's deaf. They know she signs. And still, every single time, they walk past her like she's furniture. Or worse, they try to interact with her in ways that make it clear they've never bothered to learn even basic sign language, even though they've known her for years. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. Don't be. You're one of the only people here who saw her as a person worth talking to. He leaned back. Sarah, I can call you Sarah? Of course. I know this is going to sound crazy. We've just met. But Lily needs more people like you in her life. People who don't see her deafness as a barrier or a problem to be solved, but just as a different way of being in the world. Her school is great, and she has friends there. But outside that bubble, he gestured vaguely at the room. The world isn't kind to people who are different. And I can't always be there to bridge the gap. I wasn't sure where this was going, but something in my chest tightened with anticipation. I'm looking for someone to spend time with Lily over the summer. Not a nanny. I have staff who handle the logistics. But someone to be her friend, to take her to the park, to the museums, to do the things that 6-year-olds should do with someone who can actually communicate with her freely. Someone who sees her first and her deafness second. He looked at me intently. Would you consider it? I'll pay you generously, and you'd have access to anything you needed. I just want my daughter to have a summer where she feels seen. I looked down at Lily, sleeping peacefully against my shoulder, her hands resting in her lap in the shape of a sign I recognized. Happy. Yes, I said, but not for the money. For her. Marcus Chen, the billionaire who could buy almost anything, looked at me with something like wonder. You're serious? Completely. Give me your number. I'll come by next week and we can talk details. But right now, you should probably get this sleepy girl home. As Marcus gently lifted Lily into his arms, she stirred and her eyes fluttered open. When she saw me still sitting there, she signed something quick and sleepy. Will I see you again? Definitely, I signed back. I promise. Her smile as she nestled into her father's shoulder was worth more than any amount Marcus could have offered me. I didn't know it then, but that night in the corner of the Plaza Hotel ballroom would change my life. Lily and I would spend the summer together, and I'd watch as she taught me more about resilience, joy, and living authentically than I'd learned in all my years of teaching. Marcus would become one of my closest friends, and together we'd start a foundation to train ASL interpreters and provide free sign language classes to families with deaf children. But more than any of that, I'd learn a lesson I'd somehow forgotten despite dedicating my career to communication, that seeing somebody only really seeing them, in the way they need to be seen is the most profound act of love we can offer. Everyone at that gala had looked past Lily Chen. They'd seen the billionaire's daughter, the deaf girl, the complication, the inconvenience. They'd seen everything except the remarkable, funny, bright 6-year-old who just wanted someone to talk to. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is incredibly simple. Sometimes it just means learning to speak someone else's language. Sometimes it means sitting on the floor in your fancy dress and having a conversation with a lonely child. Sometimes kindness is just paying attention when everyone else looks away.